Hello, this is the second part of the tutorial for the studentnom.com submission for the streaming media web programming unit at the University of Portsmouth. My name's Tom. I'm just going to talk you through a few lines of the code that was just briefly given an overview of in the previous video on this page. First of all, this is to connect to the database. So you put in your host and username and password details. No offense to people watching this, but I've actually taken out my host and password from the database because we don't want you to be going and creating your own tables within our database and therefore potentially messing up the site. So once you've got this DB Connect, you can include that in other files throughout the site. So first of all, you want to create the table. As you can see, this goes through and labels the fields for the database and then labels the type of field that they are. So first of all, you can see that it connects to the database using the DB Connect PHP file, and then creates a table called dishes. This only needs to be done once and can be done by the webmaster. And then it defines items either as integers or medium text, characters to specific lengths, that's a maximum of specific lengths, and also an ID which is not inputted by the user but is automatically created by the PHP and automatically counts up from 0 to however many entries there are going to be within the database. So we'll start at the very beginning with the users submitting data to the database. So you want to, there's a form, but before they get to the form you want to check that they are a human user, they're not a bot, and that's done using JavaScript client-side code, reCAPTCHA code, which is the image of scrambled text to be understood by humans only, and then they match that in an input box down here and submit it, and that goes off to the API, and if the inputted text matches the scrambled image, then they are allowed through to submit. Now, submit connects to the database because the user here, you've got your PHP at the top to define the variables used and to connect to the database, and then you've got an HTML document down here. Now this is a simple HTML table. Well, first of all, you've got the header for the table, well, the header for the page, sorry, and then you've got a form. Now, the important thing to note here is that this isn't just a text form. The users can upload a photograph of their dish or their recipe to the server, and all that is stored in the database is a reference to that image. So it's not just a normal form, you need to set the encoding type to be multi-part form data. So it's got text input boxes, it's got drop-down menus, which would have still been alright in a text form. That just ensures that those 4 options are always identical. But you've also got an input type of a file, and so that is specified. A target on the server is specified elsewhere, and you can upload a photo through that. So once you've submitted this form, it calls recipeinsert.php, which is here, and this is, again, it defines your PHP at the top and then notifies the user in the HTML that your recipe has been successfully uploaded. So we'll have a little look at the PHP behind this, the server-side programming. This is to set the target for the images. For when they're uploaded, it's just called, there's a folder on the server called images, and all of the images that are uploaded get written into there for use later on. You call your DB Connect again, and then you get everything from the previous form. So it's a posted form rather than a $get. It's a $post, much more secure, and it defines the variable that was named dish name is now called $dish name. We can then use that down here. Once we've selected the correct table from the database, we can say insert to that table. These are all of the values that are defined in the form on the previous page, and we want to put them into all of the dollar values for use elsewhere within the application. So once the user has uploaded a recipe, well, they don't necessarily have to have uploaded it, but they are given the option to browse starters, mains, or desserts, which are identical pages except for the query that is pulled. So here we're in starters.php. It connects to the database and selects the table, and then it says $result is going to be select the row from the database table, or the rows, sorry, where the genre equals starter. And again, it does that for mains at the top here, and desserts. So that always pulls out the correct things from the database to display them in a menu. So that will then, if we scroll down here, the way that it works, it goes while that row is there, loop through the results and echo the dish name, and then that's a link to take you to the recipe, which works off the page ID, which is always unique because that counts up automatically. That's always going to be unique, regardless of whether there's two recipes that are very similar in there, or two recipes maybe with the same dish name. Their page ID is always going to be unique. Yeah, and so once the user clicks on take me to the recipe, the page knows which page ID it needs to go to, and there's one file that covers the entirety of the dishes. So it doesn't matter whether the dish is a starter, a main, a dessert, or a drink. It is only ever served by dish.php, and then the variables from the database are pulled out and popped into there. So what changes are your dish name, your rating, all of these things that were defined in the database. And so you say, well, we select the row from the database table where the ID equals the page ID, which is defined up here. So if we look in the HTML, this looks like a regular HTML table. If you were building this site in HTML rather than in purely client-side code rather than server-side code, you'd have a different page for every dish, and things here would be defined as the actual dish name. But we can, because we're using server-side code, we've already pulled in from the database the row, the dish name from the row, and we've defined that as $dish name, and so we can insert that into our HTML just by opening a PHP tag and saying echo dish name. So that was, if the dish name for that page is, I don't know, spaghetti bolognese, that will appear there. The same is done here for all of the other things. Now, an important thing to mention here is that when the user is inputting the method and the ingredients, obviously that's going to be a substantial amount of text, more so than any of the other fields. And now when it gets inputted into the database, it all gets put into one string. So when you pull it out of the database, everything is just kept in one long line. Now obviously that is unintuitive and very unhelpful to the user. So we need to put in line breaks where the database says there are line breaks, even if it's not clever enough to automatically do that for us. So we use a little PHP function here called nl2br, which basically just pops in line breaks and retains the formatting that the user inputted when they were writing into the text box